And good evening. Developing right now, just hours after Governor Mike Dunleavy announced a special session for next month, several lawmakers now tell us they may add an override of the governor's education funding veto to that agenda.
Now, after we asked repeatedly about the possibility of a special session, the governor's office officially confirmed today that a proclamation for a 30-day session was issued. The focus will be on education reform and an executive order surrounding a new Department of Agriculture. Political reporter Will Courtney has breaking details.
Yeah, John, Rebecca, right before coming on the air, multiple sources telling us, including Eagle Republican Representative Jamie Allard, confirming Governor Dunleavy is telling members of the Republican minority to stay home the first 5 days of this session. And Allard says she will not be attending the session. At the same time, the governor's office says Dunleavy is not available today to talk about that special session. But I've now talked to multiple members of this bipartisan majority, including the House Speaker and Senate leadership. Many are surprised by the governor's announcement. Senate Majority Leader Kathy Giessel used the word dumbfounded, especially since some point to the governor's vetoing special session funding, adding to their confusion. They say there are no details other than the topics, what the governor calls education reform and creating an agriculture department. You may remember, lawmakers rejected that last session's Senate President Gary Stevens questioning in a statement how the governor could cite low oil prices for the education funding veto, but still push forward with the idea for an ag department. The governor's spokesperson confirming bills are still being drafted. So in lawmakers' views right now, they're working in the dark while preparing to come back to the state's capital on August 2nd.
Will, speaking to the education funding veto, you're saying that lawmakers telling you an override is now possible during the session.
Yeah, some lawmakers seem like it's actually easier now that the governor made, the veto override will be easier now that the governor has made the possibility of a special session. Senate Majority Leader Kathy Giessel again saying on the Senate side that the body is, quote, contemplating adding an override. I spoke to Senator Jesse Keel today, a Juneau Democrat and member of the majority. He says their only reservations originally were that the legislature would not be able to reconvene all their members. With the governor calling the session, he can compel legislators to come back to Juneau, including Senator Forrest Dunbar, who's currently deployed abroad.
The one thing that the Constitution does is it requires us to take up overriding any vetoes that came from the governor as soon as we convene. And so that means that the governor has called us in part to consider overriding his vetoes because that's what the Constitution requires.
Now remember, it takes 45 lawmakers to override the governor's veto. Allard saying in her statement to me she not only will not attend, calling it a waste of taxpayer money, but she said she will not vote to override the governor's veto. Allard is the only Republican member to speak on the record today. We're going to continue updating you as we sort through all of this information.
All right, Will, thank you very much. President Donald Trump's proposed spending plan is now in the hands of the U.S. House of Representatives, many of whom have had issues getting back to the Capitol after storms in the area caused flight delays and cancellations.
The Senate narrowly passed the bill with 3 Republicans holding out and the vice president breaking the tie. As of last check, the House was voting on the rule for the reconciliation bill, which would move lawmakers into debate over the bill itself. Look for updates tonight on the late edition.
A new preliminary report on a fatal helicopter crash on the North Slope is now out and says that a new pilot was manning the aircraft, which was dedicated to bird research. The National Transportation Safety Board released the report earlier today and says the Pollux Aviation helicopter out of Wasilla crashed in early June while its occupants were scouting out locations for a remote work camp for bird research on the North Slope. The pilot and passenger who passed away have not yet been publicly identified. The full report is on our website.
A South Anchorage woman is dead after being hit by a vehicle while she was out checking her mail. Now loved ones are reflecting on the 85-year-old's life and what brought it to them. Clara Matisse had a daily walk along DeArmond Road, but on June 19th, while crossing that street, she was fatally struck by a passing vehicle. She died of her injuries this past weekend. Family says that she loved fishing, crafting, and spending time with her fur babies. The full story from Georgina Fernandez is on our website.
Search and rescue teams in Juneau are looking for a cruise ship passenger who did not return from a hike near Mount Roberts yesterday. The Department of Public Safety says 62-year-old Marites Buenafe, pictured here, arrived yesterday morning on a cruise ship before telling her family she was going to hike Gold Ridge. She did not return. Juneau Mountain Rescue is conducting a ground search while wildlife troopers and U.S. Coast Guard search by air. As of last check, the aerial search is on standby until weather conditions improve. And fire danger remains high across much of the state. New evacuations issued just today.
The Himalayan fire north of Fairbanks and the Nenana Ridge complex to the south, each burning thousands of acres, saw increased activity yesterday. Bear Creek Fire just north of Healy is said to be uncontained, and conditions at the Himalaya-led Fairbanks North Star Borough last week to downgrade its evacuation order to where nobody currently has to leave their homes. But they are still being told, be ready.
Now, with that decision came the closure of an evacuation center and an animal shelter in Fairbanks. But now a red flag warning has been issued in interior Alaska, predicting hot, dry, and windy conditions this week.
Conditions are very critical for the ignition of a new fire and the rapid spread of a fire. And so people need to be very concerned. This is a warning. It's not a watch. It's not a special notice. This is a red flag warning. It's warm temperatures, very dry conditions, and with the forecasted wind, any sparked fire could spread rapidly with the wind.
A ban on setting off fireworks in the Fairbanks area will remain at least through the holiday. If you're camping, pay extra attention to your campfire.
Well, Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry has been tracking that heat and dry weather.
Melissa, what are the areas that are under weather alerts tonight?
It's a pretty widespread area. Most of the interior spreading through the Brooks Range all the way to the Arctic coast, seeing heat advisories in place. We'll show you those conditions now. We are seeing, again, everyone highlighted in pink under red flag warnings. To the north, everyone highlighted in orange is under that heat advisory. So heat advisories, those continue through the weekend. That's for the Brooks Range, western Arctic coast, for temperatures in the 80s and low 90s. For the interior through tomorrow night, we will see those hot, windy, and dry conditions that you just heard Sam mention there. Temperatures already starting to warm. Low 70s for the valley, for the Copper River Basin, upper 60s from Anchorage into Kenai and Soldotna. Through the interior, even warmer, 83 today in Fairbanks. Temperatures pushing to 84 in Coldfoot. And now that heat, even extending to the west coast, 68 degrees today in Kotzebue, 66 in Nome and Bethel. Now with high pressure building across the state, not much green on the map that tells you it is dry. Still holding on to some cloud cover for the southern half of the state. But even as we head into Friday, much of that is going to burn off as well, with that high pressure expanding and growing in the coming days. So temperatures, they will be warm. Tomorrow it's upper 60s again for Anchorage, mostly sunny and dry. Mostly sunny in the interior. The wind also kicking up with those high temperatures, also returning to the mid 80s. Juneau mid 60s, rain ending for you, and dry in Bethel with high temperatures back into the low 70s. Now a closer look at that detailed weekend forecast in a few minutes.
Thank you, Melissa. And with the holiday weekend here, always make sure to check regulations in your area if you are looking to set off fireworks.
That's right. And in case you're looking for the latest headlines from across the state on Friday, well, Tracy Sinclair has a little programming note to talk about.
That's right, guys. We are going to have news at 6 and on the late edition on Friday. And if you're looking for something a little bit fun, at 5 and 5:30, we're going to show you some of the best of our road trip and adventures from our past year. But our day starts much earlier than that. Melissa Fry and I are going to be emceeing the Anchorage July 4th Parade. And of course, down in Seward, Mount Marathon. If you're a little bit curious about why people run this race and just how hard it is, you should check out my conversation with Joey Kletka. This is his 18th time running as an adult. Last year, he wore a camera on his chest so we could see the race from his point of view. We walked through all of that. Plus, Melissa has a custom Mount Marathon race day forecast. You don't want to miss it. Check it out on our streaming platforms and on our website. It's really quite a fascinating conversation.
I'm sure it is. We'll check it out.
Awesome.
Coming up on Alaska's News Source, Red Flag Alaska returns. We have a closer look after the break.
And in case that caught the nation's attention, a verdict is reached in the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs. We'll be right back.
Alaska's News Source.
So pilots from South Korea, Japan, and Belgium recently departed Eielson Air Force Base after the most recent Red Flag Alaska exercise. And Adrian Peterson tells us about the important role that the training plays in this week's Inside the Gates.
More than 1,500 soldiers were involved in Red Flag Alaska 25-2, which saw over 70 aircraft engage in simulated combat across the Joint Pacific-Alaska Range Complex. With partners from the Pacific and Atlantic regions, multinational flight operations focused on enhancing regional readiness, combat tactics, and interoperability.
A key PACAF objective for Red Flag is integrating with our key Indo-PACOM allies and partners, in particular the JASDAF and the ROCAF. The JASDAF brought their F-15s, the ROCAF brought their F-16s.
U.S. naval forces from the 8th Fighter Wing in South Korea also took part in the exercise that seeks to enhance regional partnerships.
The best thing about doing this in Red Flag is should we have to fight tonight or take it north, they learn lessons about our techniques, tactics, and procedures, and we know how to put that all together in time of crisis.
Colonel Derek Frank says the training prepares pilots for the stress of combat by exposing them to large engagements and a lot of radio communication. He also says at the heart of the exercise are lessons learned, which will be applied during the next Red Flag and beyond. Adrian Peterson, Alaska's news source.
Thanks for listening. Click subscribe so you can get the latest podcast from Alaska's news source automatically. And stay up to date with breaking news and in-depth reporting available for free 24/7 with the Alaska's news source app.